So let's start off with Mahogany Opera, which is something that I don't know that much about, but when we had our meeting at Rosehill back in September, on that warm day in September, I bumped into a couple of people that were involved with Mahogany Opera and found out a smidgen about it, and our conversations continued from that day onwards. And here is Bridget and Mark to tell us all about it. So Bridget, Rennie, over to you.
Hello, hi everyone. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having us today. So yeah, we just want to tell you a little bit about Mahogany Opera today and what we've got planned in Cumbria over 2023. I guess, yeah, most of you probably don't know much or anything about us, so I'll tell you a bit about the company first. We are a leading commissioner and producer of new opera and music theatre, and our vision is for opera to be an inclusive, collaborative and dynamic art form. And our aim is really about stretching the boundaries about who opera is for and what it can be. We're interested in expanding who makes opera, who performs opera and who sees opera. And sort of around that, we really want to share the power of live music and theatre, show that everyone's an artist with the potential to be involved in making opera, and give adults and children the opportunity to experience opera in inclusive environments, as well as supporting diverse artists to develop their practice and present new work, which amplifies diverse perspectives. So there are kind of key aims, and we do that through 3 key strands of work. The first one is Snappy Operas, which is our award-winning participatory primary schools programme. And in that, we go into primary schools. There's sort of 2 sides to it: a commissioning side, where we've commissioned 12 pieces so far, where we've sent a composer and a writer into a primary school and they've created a new 10-minute piece, which was then performed by the children. And now we've got this, over the last 5 or 6 years that those have been created, we've taken those existing pieces into other schools for the young people to work on and stage and perform themselves. So I think to date we've worked in over 100 schools with around about 4,000 young people across the country, including some schools in West Cumbria. So yeah, that's Snappy Operas. Then we have various stages, which is our sort of R&D and artist development strand, where we do open calls and workshops and support artists to develop their ideas. And then finally, we have a commissioning strand where we commission work for professional and non-professional artists to perform and produce it ourselves, usually in partnership with other organisations. So just to give you a little flavour of the kind of range of work we are commissioning at the moment, we're working with an artist called Wando Abizie, who's a British-Nigerian artist, to create an immersive installation opera, which we're hoping to premiere next autumn. We're also commissioning composer Rolf Hind and writer Dante Michaud to write an opera based on the life of Rumi, which will be ready in 2024. Some operas have very long timescales, but we're also about doing things quickly as well. And then over next summer, we're going to be touring a piece called Out of Her Mouth, which is a staging of a piece which was actually written 300 years ago, not 3,000 years ago, by a French woman composer called Elizabeth Jacquet de la Guerre. It's never been staged at all that we know of, and it's never been performed in any way in the UK. So we're putting that on as a new show and touring that in summer 2023. So that's kind of just a little flavour of the sort of range of stuff we do. We were founded in 2003, so we're approaching our 20th anniversary. We'll be celebrating that during next year as well. And we're a national company. We have a very small team. I'm the executive director, and Mark, who I think has completely dropped out, he's just sent me a message. But he is our producer. And me and Mark comprise about half the team. So there's 4 of us who kind of make most of it happen. And then we obviously bring in various freelancers and artists for our different projects. And we all work remotely, sort of spread across the country and beyond the country, in fact, as our artistic director is based in Berlin. And we have a couple of colleagues that we work with regularly in Cumbria. And we've been doing projects in Cumbria since 2015, and we're really interested now kind of deepening our presence in the county, having moved our registered address to our friends at Rosehill Theatre, as Tom mentioned. It was about just over a year ago that we did that. So yeah, we're really looking forward to kind of making more connections, and it's great to be here for that. So just to give you a little flavour, and sorry I didn't do any slides for this presentation, but we do have a little film just to give you a little flavour of our work, which is about our flagship young people's programme, Snappy Operas. If you could share.
Make it snappy.
A snappy opera is something that you do with your heart and you put all your passion in.
Tends to be about 10 minutes long. Your whole class does it, and it's split into 2 or 3 groups, and each group is a character.
They don't take as much time, but it tells a wonderful story.
We've all participated and had a really nice time. Basically everyone has a role, everyone's included.
We've made our own props and costumes.
The props are amazing, the costumes are amazing.
We used online resources and it helped us learn how to sing.
So the orchestra makes the play more exciting. They kind of give us encouragement.
Working with the creative team was kind of like a treat.
We've all been learning how to project our voice and project our emotions.
My favourite things about Snappy Opera is to work together as a team.
I never thought with the people that I got put in a group with that I would be able to work with them.
I would say you should get involved because it's fun, you can be yourself.
My whole class is just so interested and gripped.
You have to try it, it's amazing.
My friends think it's really fun as well, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do it.
It's a fun activity that can bring out a different you.
It's like your time to shine, like your moment that you get to show the rest of your class and the teachers that you can perform.
Make it snappy.
Make it snappy.
Make it snappy.
Make it snappy.
Stop laughing, it's making me laugh.
Yeah, I'm gonna look away. This.
Lovely stuff. I love that definition. The orchestra makes the play more exciting. I think that's the definition of opera, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good one. And I think, it also brings out the thing that we, because lots of people think doing an opera with primary school kids is a bit mad, but actually, for us, the kind of holistic nature of the art form is a great way in for kids, because it's like, some people think, I'm a great believer that everyone can sing, but some people are like, oh no, I don't do singing. Singing's not my thing. But actually, even if you don't want to sing, there's so many ways in, because you can make the props, you can make the costumes, you can do the stage management, you can help with the directing. So for us, it's a really lovely way to engage kids in different, there's lots of different art forms within it. But yes, the orchestra does make the play more exciting. So yeah, my favorite line is it brings out a different you, because I think it's just that chance of working with professional artists that not all primary school kids get. And it really does sort of, for some of them, really kind of give them a chance to shine.
Yeah.
So that's kind of gives you a little flavour of that strand of our work. And I like the sort of drum I like to bang at this point is that I think, unlike a lot of opera companies and arts organisations more widely, for us this is not this sort of department in the corner where we do our kind of education and outreach. This is our flagship strand of work. We actually put more artistic and financial resources into it. We commission more work for young people than we do for professionals, and it's we see it as kind of a really key plank of what we do. So that's something that we're really committed to. And so we've been doing that programme for 5 or 6 years now. It's quite well established in various corners of the country. We work quite a lot with music hubs in different areas, including Cumbria Music Service, to work with different schools. And Mark's been working on them for almost 5 years, so he can tell you a bit more about it at some point. I've only been with the company for a year, so I'm relatively new. But it's an established and successful strand. And what we have decided over the last year or two that we really wanted to do is kind of develop it to kind of make it more inclusive. And we'd had for a while a goal to do a snappy opera in a SEND school with disabled children. And so we're really thrilled when, about a year and a half ago, I think, Cumbrian Music Service introduced us to Sandgate School in Kendal. And then just around about the time that I started, we had a meeting for the first time with some of the Cumbrian Music Service team, and this incredible teacher at Sandgate called Annie Russello, some of you might know her, and she is both a trained music therapist and also a specialist teacher in the school. And she's just an absolute firecracker. As soon as we met her, we knew that this project was going to be great. And, you know, for example, normally when we do a commissioning project for a snappy opera, we go into a primary school, we work with one class of like 30 kids. And I was thinking, if we're working with an SEND school, it's probably going to be fewer children than that. It's going to be, you know, there might only be 10 or 15. As soon as we met, she said, no, I want the whole school involved, 120 kids from 4 to 19. I want them all involved in the project. So that's what we're doing. And, you know, they're not all going to make the music, they're all going to perform at the end, but they're all going to have a role. So some of them will make props, some of them will be involved front of house, some of them will record sounds that'll be part of the final piece. So yeah, that's an ambition that we're going to fulfill. So last summer we did an open call for the artists to work on this project, and we were really pleased to find one artist who I think lots of you know, Jack McNeil, who I know has been on this call not that long ago, a brilliant composer and clarinetist based in Kendal. And that was something we're really keen to do, is work with at least one local artist through that project. And he's working with a theatre maker called Claire Willoughby, who is based in Glasgow, and she's a real specialist in making theatre with young people with disabilities. She's been a Jerwood fellow with the Imaginate Festival, which is a children's theatre festival, and Oily Cart, who specialise in work for young people with disabilities. And we've sort of just started doing some kind of devising R&D. They were both working in the school for a week in November on the primary school side, doing some kind of workshopping, and I went for one day to see some of their work, and it was beautiful. So we're really excited, and then they'll be back in the spring doing more devising and running up to doing performances at the school in July next year. And we're hoping to film that so that then the work can kind of have a wider reach, and hopefully arrange a screening at Brewery Arts probably next autumn. But something else, as well as the kind of excitement of commissioning a new work in this setting, we're also really keen to kind of learn from the process and get a kind of blueprint so that we can carry on developing work in those settings, and also really look critically at the work that we're doing in mainstream schools and make that more inclusive as well, because obviously increasingly there are lots of children with different needs educated in mainstream settings. So that's also sort of Snappy Opera programme, and you know, something we're developing in Cumbria over the next sort of 7 months, I guess. And at this point I was going to hand over to Mark to talk about another project that we're doing in West Cumbria this year, but I think
we'll save that for another day. It's fine.
But I mean, I can talk briefly about it.
Yeah.
I do know something about it.
And then we'll open up to questions. If anyone's got any questions, then after this, now be your time to think of those, and then we'll go to questions after Bridget's just told us about this project. Off you go, Bridget.
So yeah, we're also developing a new collaboratively composed project called The Great Learning over the next sort of, again, 7 months or so, which will it's going to be developed in 3 places, of which Whitehaven is one. So we're going to be working in partnership with Rose Hill, also in Newcastle and Edinburgh. And The Great Learning is going to be a work that's inspired by a composer from the 70s, English composer called Cornelius Cardew, who is kind of avant-garde communist composer. And he wrote this piece, which is not really a score, it's like a set of instructions. And it's basically about everyone singing together in different ways, using text from Confucius, which is where the title The Great Learning comes from. And so we want to use, it's a community singing project, really. We want to use community singers. It's not for professionals, it's for adult kind of amateur singers. So we're going to work with lots of choirs to kind of bring words and music and movement together to kind of explore people's experience of the pandemic, and you know, what questions it raises about society, and kind of how the arts can kind of feed into that. So it's not, you know, there's not going to be sheet music. It's not for people who, you don't have to be able to read music, and it's all about kind of singing together and creating something collaboratively. There will be music leaders and facilitators to help with the kind of generation of text. So we're doing a workshop at Rose Hill Theatre on the 21st of January, which I think we put some details in one of the recent newsletters about, but hopefully that can be recirculated. So that's going to be a day on the 21st of January for people to come together who are interested in this to find out more and do some singing, working with Dave Camlin, who actually I met through this network. So for me, this is a great example of how this network works. And also Emma McGordon, who I think has also been on one of these calls recently. So they're going to be facilitating the day at Rose Hill. Just starting to generate some ideas, and then we'll be doing some devising really to start creating the piece in May, and we're hoping to perform as part of Harbour Fest in Whitehaven on the 1st of July next year. So yeah, that's that project, and it'd be great for you to spread the word about it within your networks, or if anyone right here on this call is intrigued, then do please come along on the 21st of January. I'll put some details in the chat after this. And there's, just to finish, there's a lovely quote which we've sort of been inspired by in developing this project, which I wanted to read out, if that's all right. It's not very long. It's quite interesting because it was shared during the pandemic, and it was originally attributed to a 19th century Irish writer called Kathleen O'Mara, and people thought she'd written it about the sort of time of the potato famine, but actually it turned out it was by a contemporary American writer, and it was all one of these Twitter storms. But regardless of the source, we really like the words, and kind of it's inspired us in the development of the piece. So I'll read that and then open up to questions. And the people stayed home and read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games and learned new ways of being and were still and listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, some met their shadows. And the people began to think differently, and the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses and made new choices and dreamed new images and created new ways to live and heal the earth fully as they had been healed.
Wow, that's made us all think, made us all reflect. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you for letting us know of all your energetic plans. I've got a couple of questions, but has anyone else got any questions, first of all, that they want to just fire at Kate, fire at Bridget about Mahogany Opera and what they're doing?
Thanks, Bridget. That was so nice. I'm really touched by that little video. Isn't it gorgeous to see that kind of natural enthusiasm in children about opera? And as somebody that was taken to the opera loads as a kid, and I just thought it was completely normal to be at the opera on a regular basis. Clearly, that's not at all normal, and I now understand how massively privileged I was. I just love to see people getting enthusiastic about opera, especially kids. Anyway, I'm also very pleased to know that the network had a tiny role in bringing things together in a little way for you and Dave Cameron for the project in January. That's great. It's not kind of apparent why Rose Hill has become your registered office. I mean, it's terrific. I'm just interested to know.
Well, I think there's a few reasons really. We've done quite a few projects there over the years. Is it Richard Elder who was there before? He had been a big supporter of Mahogany, and we put on quite a few shows there in the theatre. So it was somewhere that we'd enjoyed performing over the years as a company, and we'd also done this project in Whitehaven at Jericho Primary School to make a new snappy opera, which was composed by Erilyn Wallin, which was a great project. And we were keen. I was going to say, when I joined, I said, look, I felt like we had worked in lots of different places with lots of different great partners, and I felt that we should sort of focus in on a few key areas and be a bit more strategic about where we work. But actually, the decision to base ourselves at Rose Hill happened before I joined the company. And I think it was just basically the place we registered before, which was Watford Palace Theatre, that sort of partnership had come to an end, and they'd actually sort of said, it's time for you to move on. So we were kind of looking for a new home, I guess, and it was somewhere that we were interested in working more, and Rose Hill were happy to have us, and we've really enjoyed sort of developing a relationship with Deanne and Dan there, and sort of developing ideas for future work. So yeah.
Okay. It's good to know that you set the trend for moving out of London.
But Watford Palace Theatre is technically not a London. And if you're talking Arts Council speak, it's not a London company. Weirdly, it's actually whatever the other one, Southeast is. But yes, we were ahead of the game on all that Arts Council shit. And also, we're not an NPO, so it's not really to do with that either.
No, of course, it's complete. And who wouldn't want to move to West Cumbria after all?
No, but I know, I mean, some people are a bit cynical about it, I think, because of this whole Arts Council thing about forcing organisations to leave London, but we've sort of not, because we've operated remotely since before the pandemic, so we're not really, I live in London, but I'm the only person in the team that does. We're not really considered, we don't really consider ourselves a London company.
No.
And you could argue that the Rose Hill thing is, it's just an address on a piece of paper, but actually we want it to be more than that.
Good.
Thank you, Kate. Any other questions for anyone else while we've got Bridget with us? Bridget, the only other kind of opera thing we've done on here is with a guy called Joe Davis, who runs a thing called the Cumbria Opera Group, I think it's called.
Yes, I know of him, but I've not met Joe yet. So.
Okay, he's a force of nature. He really is.
Yeah, you should meet him. He's amazing.
So what's your story into opera, Bridget?
I guess mine is via, I wasn't someone who experienced a lot of opera as a young person, but I did do a lot of classical music. I played the cello and did a lot of orchestra and that sort of thing. And then that's sort of how I got into kind of arts management in the beginning of my career. But I worked for a classical music festival. And then I joined a company called Streetwise Opera, which some of you might know, which is a participatory company that works with people who are affected by homelessness. And really that was kind of my way in, because I joined that company really because I kind of identified with the social mission more than the opera side of things. But then, so I've come at it from a kind of participatory direction rather than a sort of high art form. And I've always been interested in contemporary music. So Mahogany I feel I found a home here because, it's that mix of participatory work and contemporary work, which appeals to me. And, I'm not someone who, I've seen a few operas now. I'm not totally, I appreciate some of them, but I'm not like a huge Puccini fan, for example. That's not my kind of bag.
Oh, it's just really, I think the fusion that you're creating between participation and inclusivity and this, what a lot of people perceive to be quite a high art form, is so ambitious and so clever that you're doing that. And that film, as people have said in chat, gorgeous, Your Time to Shine, I love it, beautiful video, wonderful to see that excitement. And as Ian's put there, those children should write all of our copy, magnificent. Real energy came from that little film. Great example of a little film, actually 2 minutes long as well, about a project that a lot of people could learn from. I think about how simple it is, and letting the participants tell the story as well. Well, listen, Bridget, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Great that you've got a great project coming on in West Cumbria, and I know Amy's put in a link there to people about the great learning taking place, the singing day. I think you said in January the 21st. Is that what you said?
That's right. Yes. Thank you.
Do you want to just put we'll move on to hear from Stuart shortly, but Bridget, before you leave the meeting, do make sure you put your contacts into chat so that people can contact you if they'd like to after this call. Great to hear from you. Let's stay in touch. And,
thanks for having me. I'll stay in the call because I'm very interested to hear about everyone else.
There's some good stuff to come. Yeah. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Great stuff, Bridget. Thank you so much. That's Bridget Rennie there at Mahogany Opera. Right. Let's cross from one bit of London to another bit of London. I don't know which bit of London Bridget is in or Stuart's in, but it's a big old place. And we're going to hear now from Stuart Armstrong. He's a filmmaker, originally from Cumbria, I think, Stuart. Is that right? From where? I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, that's right. I'm from Lazenby near Penrith.
All right. Okay. And
Penrith Cooperative Society mug.
Yeah, we should. I hope everyone's got some sort of Cumbrian mug in their collection of some connection in some way, shape, or form. Stuart is a very gifted filmmaker, and he kind of makes things happen as well. So, Stuart, the floor is yours to tell us about your projects that you're working on at the moment.
Thank you, Tom. Very kind words. Yes, have we got a slideshow?
Yeah, give me a second, Stuart. Just fill for 30 seconds.
I'll warm up the crowd. Right? Yeah. Hi, yeah. My name's Stuart Armstrong. I'm a screenwriter and production designer from London. I live in London, from Cumbria. I've gone native. I've been in London since 2015. I moved here to study film practice at the University of the Arts. And after graduating, I stayed because this is where the work was. And yeah, I kind of ended up living here now, and I quite like it, although with a lot of my projects, I have this this kind of allure back to Cumbria. A lot of the things I want to make and I'm writing are based and set in Cumbria, and I want to kind of use local talent and base productions there in the future. So next slide, please, Tom, if you can. If you're able to full screen it as well, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the work that I've been doing over the last few years. I've been writing short films, funding them with producers, and working with directors to get them made. And that's with a view to making like full-length feature films in the next few years. So I work with two different directors primarily, a guy called George Moore and a guy called Joseph Daly. And we make very different things together, but they kind of have a similar through line, I like to think. Maybe if you go to window, Tom, there might be a full screen option there.
I'm less familiar with PDF. Sorry, Stuart. So if you want to guide me as to what you think I should do.
In the top bar, if there's a window tab.
What, sorry?
If you go up next to help. Oh, maybe not. It's fine. We'll just do it like this. It's fine. So yeah, I made a film in 2018 called Paul is Dead, which is a short comedy film about the conspiracy theory that Paul McCartney died in 1966 and was replaced by a lookalike. And it places the story of this like infamous conspiracy theory in the Lake District with the Beatles on this musical retreat, which goes wrong. They wake up after this like crazy night and Paul's dead and they have to bury him at the top of a fell. So that was our grad film from uni. And that did really well at film festivals. So it went on to do quite a lot for us in terms of getting our names out there. And we actually wrote Paul is Dead as a feature film in 2020 during the lockdown, and it's been optioned by a production company. So we're kind of developing that continuously over the next few years, hopefully trying to get it made. Next slide, please, Tom. In this past year, George and I made a short film called Free Spirits, which is a similarly kind of wacky comedy horror short about a haunted nudist camp. And that was quite a big budget thing in terms of making a short film. And that's just been finished. It has premiere in London in last two weekends ago, which went really well. We packed out a 300-seat theatre, got lots of industry contacts down there, and kind of the future is bright with this film, I think, which will lead us on to the feature films that we want to make, i.e. Paul is Dead, and next slide, please, Tom. This other film, The Farewell Tour of Witch's Tit, which is a comedy horror feature film which we've written, which is kind of like Spinal Tap meets The Wicker Man, and is about this like hapless folk rock group who think they're getting booked to play the Isle of Wight festival, for example, but it's actually this like murderous pagan sacrifice. So that's currently in development. We have a script. We're talking to, it's been optioned by a production company, and we're kind of working on funding over the next period. So fingers crossed we can get this made in the next couple of years. And moving on to my other collaborator, Joseph Daly. Joe and I made this film, The Leary, back in 2021. It was funded by the British Film Institute, and again has done really well at festivals, and we're very proud of it. I think we showed a clip or the trailer for it last time I was on the call, actually, back in May. And since then it's gone on to many other film festivals. It's won an award from an organization called Shooting People, which is a kind of filmmakers networking organization, and has found its online home now and will be released online in March, I think, on a site called Alter, which is like a kind of short film platform for like gothic horror, which is very exciting. And Joe and I are now working on our debut feature script. Next slide, please, Tom. Called The Navvies, again with the British Film Institute. They have given us some funding to develop it. It's actually the early development fund, and then there's the development fund, then there's the production fund. So we're kind of sticking with the BFI with Joe and I, because they're kind of going to get us where we need to be. So by February, we'll have a treatment for this, and we'll be pitching it, trying to get some cash to write it. And it's a similarly kind of Gothic Victorian story about two Irish workers who are building like the tube lines underneath London. But that brings me on to the reason I'm here today, which is to talk about a film that Joe and I made back in October called Corpse Road, which is set in Cumbria. Next slide, please, Tom. So as I said, we shot the film back in October, and it's similarly kind of dark and Gothic, as is our brand, if you like. But it's set on the old corpse roads, the old corpse roads in Cumbria, which, if you don't know, are pathways where outlying communities would take their dead to the nearest consecrated burial ground. So a lot of like villages in the Lake District and in Cumbria didn't have a place to bury their dead, so they'd have to walk for miles and miles over the fells and down dales to the nearest churchyard. And next slide, please, Tom. This film is about a farmer in 1525 who has to take his mother-in-law's body over the corpse road. But he blames everything that's gone wrong in his life and his crops failing and his marriage being unloving on his mother-in-law. And so he's kind of begrudging her and monologuing endlessly at this like poor dead woman that he's dragging across the fells. So we shot the film in October in Cumbria. It was co-written with a guy called Bill Sutton, who is a poet from Helton in the Lowther Valley. And it's written in kind of period Cumbrian dialect, but with this kind of faux Shakespearean flair to it as well. And we worked with a guy called Simon Roper, who is like a linguistics expert and kind of focuses on Cumbrian dialects to kind of perfect this like this period dialect, which was a lot of fun working with the actors and all the rest of it. We funded the film partly through crowdfunding, and if I could have the next slide, please, Tom. These are some of the these are all of the crowdfunders who helped us to get the budget to get the thing made. You'll see a couple of familiar names on there. The Arts Network's own Tom Spate, a guy called Alan Cleaver, who wrote a brilliant book, which was really helpful when we were researching the film. Yeah, The Corpse Roads of Cumbria, which I recommend. Yeah, next slide, please, Tom. And yeah, this is kind of just a bit of bump about the Corpse Roads, which we're sending to kind of to investors now, because it's very hard to explain what this kind of niche part of Cumbrian folklore is for someone who's never really been to the area or knows about it. Next slide, please, Tom. And here's some more stills from our footage. So we're now entering post-production on the film, and we had some kind of some setbacks during production, so our budget hasn't gone as far as we hoped it would. So we're currently kind of seeking post-production collaborators in terms of like funding the post-production of the film. It's a whole other set of people who'll be working on it. They say you make a film 3 times, you know, when you write it, when you make it, and then when you edit it. And each time the film becomes something completely different that you didn't think it was going to be. So it's kind of, we're trying to raise the funds to get that third part of the process to happen. Next slide, please, Tom. Yeah, so here's Joe Bill and I and our actor Chris there in Rydal Cave shooting the film. Next slide again, please, Tom. We had a brilliant cast. Chris, who's a local lad from near Penrith, and a brilliant actor. He's based in Manchester. He's a theatre maker and movement director, but a fantastic actor. And Annabelle Lanyon, who isn't from Cumbria, but was a trooper in learning the very kind of alien dialect that she had no idea kind of existed before the film. And she was brilliant. She plays his mother-in-law. Next slide, please, Tom. And the next one, if you wouldn't mind. Thanks. So I wanted to talk briefly about some trouble we had in the production. The corpse roads, as I said, are kind of these roads that would go through private land, but they would always be made like they would always be cleared for public use. So they kind of have this interesting like history in the wider kind of England land movement. And we ironically had quite a bit of trouble getting access to locations when making this film. So if, okay, have the next slide, please. This is a letter I sent to an unnamed landowner in Cumbria trying to get access to a cave that was on their land. And next slide, please. This is the reply that I received via email, which was a blanket no without any explanation whatsoever. And I just wanted to kind of come on and show this, because I think it's important that people understand what the problem Cumbrian filmmakers have in trying to access locations that are owned by either the National Trust or private landowners. And again, next slide, please, Tom. This is an exchange I had with the National Trust. They actually have a blanket rule on all short films. They don't support short filmmakers in using National Trust property as for locations at all, which I think is an insane policy, because as I explain in this email, short film is the registered route into the film industry. It's an art form which is the only way young filmmakers can kind of, you know, prove their worth and earn their salt in order to break into the film industry. And I think it is quite a restrictive problem that these, not only, I mean, we've been having problems with, you know, private landowners for years in terms of like access rights to common land and all the rest of it. But the National Trust, which is this organization which owns, you know, is one of the biggest landowners in England, isn't supporting young filmmakers. And I think there has to be some kind of conversation that's had there. I'm not sure if I'm the one to have it, but especially when a lot of the, you know, a lot of the land in Cumbria and specifically the Lake District is National Trust land. So how do we get around this problem of land access? Next slide, please, Tom. We shot it anyway. We just kind of, we went and we did it and we guerrillaed it. And, you know, no one had any problems. No one came up to us and even asked what we were doing. But we got the film in the can. That's what's important. So next slide again, please, Tom. As I mentioned earlier, we're now trying to raise an extra £1,000 to pay for the post-production of the film. And I'm not here to ask for money from people, because we've already done a crowdfunder, and that was, you know, that's what it was back in March or May or whenever it was. But what I am asking for is, if anyone has any connection to any kind of organization or philanthropic individual who'd be interested in this film and this story that we have in the can and is ready to go, but we just need that extra push over the finish line to get finished and get released, then a connection would be much appreciated. So any and all ideas, please shoot my way. And next slide, please, Tom. My details are here, and I'll put them in the chat as well. But it'd be great to get a conversation going with anyone who has any ideas in terms of where we could reach out to post-production funders who'd be interested in the project. but yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say today. Thank you so much for having me, and it's been nice to come and talk about this film, which we've spent so long trying to get off the ground and get made, and it's just this kind of final push now. So thanks very much.
So thank you, Stuart. Really good example of the barriers and frustrations that you come across in trying to make your art and craft and profession work out as well. I'm just once I've stopped sharing my screen, I can look at chat. I'm just looking at what people are putting in chat.
Stuart, I was just going to ask, I really like the look of your work. Have you got an editor in place already, or are you looking for an editor? Because I was going to say that some production, post-production houses will do it for a lower rate if you want to partner with one of the editors in there, but if you've got one already, then
we do actually have an editor at the moment attached. A woman called Anna Bartroli. She edited our last film, The Leary, and she's actually doing it in gratis, which is really kind of her. So, but we'd still like to pay her, obviously, but she's the one kind of element of post-production we do have in place. But we're still aiming to kind of raise the funds in order to pay her. But yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I might email you and have a chat, because I've got a few ideas actually.
Are you a filmmaker, Sophie? I can't remember.
Yes, yeah, I'm yeah.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, we've not met actually, but thank you for shouting up.
This is what it's all about. Any other observations? Or Cathedral Quarry is a magnificent location as well. It's one of my favourite bits of Cumbria. It's astonishing if you've not been there. Near the Three Shires Inn. It's an amazing place. All right, just have a look at the chat, Stuart, as well. Some interesting comments there. Ian talking about it being an important issue. Absolutely, permission to film things and to do things in our natural landscape as much as anywhere else. But good luck with raising the money. Who knows what this call may or may not produce as far as Leeds is concerned. And the navvies, I'm fascinated by the navvies and what they did and how they were and how they lived as well. So I look forward to finding out more about that in due course when that, what a long lead time these things have when that comes to fruition as well. Stay in touch, Stuart, and congratulations on the progress you've made so far.
Thanks very much, Tom, and thanks.
Right, and make sure that when it does get finished, it has a Cumbrian screening somewhere, and we'll all pile into wherever it is you're doing it.
I'm sure it will. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there's the Keswick Osprey Short Film Awards, which I'm sure we'll be applying to, and all the rest of it. It's nice to kind of bring it all back home, at the end of it.
Yeah, great. All right. Thank you, Stuart. Last but very much by no means least, Maddie Moore has joined the call. I thought she might be probably under about 7 layers of wool on a windy Hadrians Wall, but fortunately she's found some respite, and she's found a warm room to be in. Maddie, you're very welcome. I was saying earlier, I alluded to the project that you're working on, the Saturnalia project coming across from Northumbria through to Cumbria. So bring us up to speed on what's going on, and maybe if you can let us know about the Cumbrian dates in due course as well. But kind of what's it all about? Where does it all come from? What's going on?
Of course. I'm actually in South Shields, which is the first Roman fort, the very end of the line of Hadrian's Wall, and that's where we're starting. So I'm one of the coordinating producers for Hadrian's Wall 1900 Festival with my colleague Ellie, who's just had to take our performers out to site to have some fire training. It's a busy time. We've been in post since November 2020, and we're brought in on behalf of the Hadrian's Wall Partnership to deliver a festival that celebrated the 1900th anniversary of Hadrian's Wall. And there was a desire from the partnership that what we were celebrating was the full 1900 years and was about the communities and not just about the monument. And that's something that we've taken through from the outset. So we're closing the festival in the next couple of weeks. That it finishes properly on the 23rd of December, which is the end of the Roman festival of Saturnalia. And we're creating our own Saturnalia celebration for the communities of Hadrian's Wall, which will tour from South Shields all the way to Maryport over the next 11 days. Can everyone hear me okay? Because I'm on my phone, so I just want to make sure I'm not cutting out. Great. So it's been a journey. We started work with Hannah Fox, who's actually in the other room just sorting out some props and things. She can probably hear me talking. And Hannah's brother Dan, who's the person that introduced me, who I think you probably know really well. Hannah delivered a really great R&D project with communities across Hadrians Wall, where she took a performance with some games for people to play, a bit of digging treasure to start to inform what it is that we might do. And then what we came up with is that we wanted to deliver a wall-wide Knees Up, which was an opportunity to bring a big celebration, a big party to those communities, and do a real celebration of those communities that aren't necessarily adjacent to sections of Hadrian's Wall, but are very much rooted as Hadrian's Wall communities. So that's kind of where it's all come from. We had lots of feedback from the Hadrian's Wall Partnership about events that have happened wall-wide that have been about lighting the wall or putting beacons on the wall. And what we wanted to do is make it a celebration of the people and the places, and those places that have been shaped by their place on the wall, rather than it just being about the monument itself. So what we're doing is what we're calling a travelling intervention. It's part performance, part installation, and it features a merry band of entertaining merrymakers who will come and meet the people in their community and welcome them into a space. We're in a kind of timeless space with performers from different centuries across the whole 1900 years who land every 100 years to celebrate Saturnalia. And they're welcoming people in to help them do a big celebration. So we've got creative lighting, fire, live performance, live music, interactive projection, lots of things, and basically welcome people in and have a big party and a big celebration. And the idea is that we travel the whole length of the wall. So we're here in South Shields at the minute. The first event is tomorrow evening, and then we basically turn up, set up, deliver the show, pack away, and then move on to the next location over 10 nights. So we start here. I'll give you the lay of the land across the whole tour, and I'll give specifics about the Cumbrian dates. So South Shields is tomorrow. We're then at Segadoon and Roman Fort on Sunday. We're at Dentonburn, which has got quite a prominent section of Hadrian's Wall, but is very suburban, in Newcastle. Heading on the Wall, Hexham, then Haltwhistle, and then we move across into Cumbria. So we're in Brampton on Saturday the 17th, and the place that we're at, if anyone's local, is just outside Wilson Memorial Homes. It's kind of on the way into Brampton. There's a section of like triangle grass area. That was the biggest section of flat grass that we could find, so we're there for that one. In Carlisle, we're in Chances Park, just behind Morton Manor Community Centre, and that's on the 18th, which annoyingly is that this clashes with the World Cup final, but fingers crossed we'll still get some audience. On Monday the 19th, we are in Silloth on Silloth Green, and obviously Silloth Green is absolutely massive, so we're sort of near to the kind of intersection of Lawn Street and Criffle Street. But all of this is on our website. And then we finish in Maryport, behind Ewan Rig and Netherton Community Centre. So we were going to be at the harbour, but some permissions didn't work. And actually, we've always wanted to be in quite residential areas. So that's a really nice community setting as well. And yeah, as I say, the aim is that it's for the community. So it's not a huge installation. It's quite intimate. And what we want it to be is for people to walk to from their community. So our marketing activity has been hyper local, which is why some of you might not have heard about it. We're doing door drop leaflets and very targeted social media activity. I am about to do an interview on BBC Radio Newcastle, which will explain some of this as well, because what we don't want is people piling in from elsewhere outside of the areas that we're delivering and making it a more difficult experience for others. We really want it to be about the people in their place. So that's, yeah. I'll put a link in the chat as well.
Do that and make sure the website link is there. Thank you, Maddie. And Saturnalia. So do you know what the origins of Saturnalia is? I know we've got someone from the Maryport Museum here. Jane, is it?
Oh yes, Jane.
Probably knows a bit about it. Is Jane still with Jane? There she's. I think her window might be off. But anyway, Saturnalia. What's it all about, Jane and Maddie? Is it something to do with the planet Saturn? Same god?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Not actually. It's them. It was a Roman celebration of the god Saturn, who's god of abundance, peace, farming, agriculture. It started out as a festival that ran from the 17th to the 23rd of December, as a kind of way of people letting go. Jane, you'll probably have much better terminology than I do.
Jane, can you add to that, Jane?
No, I think Maddie's got it right, actually. I think I describe it to people when people ask me what Saturnalia is. I say it's sort of a bit like Christmas on steroids.
That's a good description. Yeah, so there was lots of things like role reversals, and everyone was treated equally. Everyone had the same sort of uniform. Togas weren't worn. Instead, people had the same kind of felt hat, and that was so that everyone was on equal footing for the celebrations. And there was a Lord of Misrule that was crowned, and that'll be a big thing that happens as part of our show as well. And we'll be crowning
the Lord of Misrule.
Lord of Misrule. So they come and make up crazy rules for people to follow, and often that would be servants would have that. They'd be able to do that, but they might be quite careful about how far they took it, in case that when they went back to being on servant duties, then they might get in trouble from the masters for making them be a little bit too foolish.
And if this weather stays as it is, I mean, I don't know what the plan is with the anticyclone, where it's depositing itself over the next few days, but that would be perfect, wouldn't it? We want lovely cold still, presumably.
Yes,
I'm sure you've weatherproofed the whole thing, but
it's very weatherproof. Unless there's real heavy weather warnings, then it'll go ahead no matter what. And we've had sleet and a little bit of snow and ice, all sorts already. So
not ideal toga weather, is it?
It's not ideal toga weather. We won't be wearing togas.
All right, well, it sounds like a great festival, and anything with sort of fire and stuff and noise, and I'm sure Dan has got all sorts of things up his sleeve. I was chatting to him a couple of weeks ago, and he's been working on this for a while, I think. So it sounds like it's exciting. And the first night, did you say it's tonight in South Shields, Maddie?
Tomorrow night, Saturday the 10th in South Shields. And just to say, so this is only one part of Saturnalia as part of Hadrian's Wall. Jane, you're delivering a Saturnalia event for the festival as well, aren't you, at Sen House?
Yeah. I mean, we got a Hadrian's Wall 1900 community grant, which has been great. Actually, we've been working with people in the local community on two strands: creative writing, but also family crafts, producing basically writing so inspired by Saturnalia, and also all crafts. I mean, the kids are making felt hats that you referred to, Maddie. So. And we're having a big part. Well, it'll have to be a relatively small party because it is going to be indoors. We're going to be having a party on the 17th where the invites are going to be. We have to limit it to 50 people, so the invites are going out to everybody that's been involved with the project and all the local community, like the big Saturnalia celebration. It's about our local communities getting involved.
And there's lots more happening. There's a couple of other community grants that we gifted as well, including to Greencroft Art. So I think also part of this network as well, aren't they? And so I've sent the tour website. I'll just put another one in. The other thing that we've been developing alongside that Hannah Fox has been working really hard on is some Saturnalia packs, which is helping communities and families to create their own Saturnalia, whether that's at their kitchen table or in a community centre. And those are made up of all sorts of things like gathering games, wreath making, mat making, crown making, Roman recipes. So do take a look at those. Those are a completely free resource. And we've been sending some physical packs out as well to schools and groups and lots of other people along the length of the wall as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Maddie. Good luck with it all. May the weather gods be on your side as well as the Roman gods. And
thank you so much.
It sounds like a great thing, and it comes to Cumbria in the next few days. So looking forward to hearing all about that. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you. I'm going to shoot because I've got to. If that's
we're finishing the meeting, so that's fine.
Great,
Maddie.
great. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maddie. Kate, did you want to say something?
Sam, Janet wants to say something about volunteers for the Greencroft Arts Saturnalia event. Janet, quick.
Hello everyone. I'm working with Amanda at Greencroft Arts on their Saturnalia event for the Saturday the 17th. It's going to be at Gilsland Village Hall, big Roman feast. The community have been making Roman style lamps, which will be decorating the hall with. Lord and Miss Rule will be there. It sounds like a real fun thing to be involved with, but we're looking for volunteers to help set up the hall and be like the front of house staff for the event as well. So that's my shout out.
Thank you, Janet. Right, it's 10:30. Next week is the last one before the new year. We'd like everyone to have, if they would like to, some sort of festive window. So you don't have to have a Santa hat on, but you might want to choose to find a festive backdrop or have a live reindeer in your living room, whatever you want to do. Something festive for next week would be lovely, just to, because I think by next week we might all have 1 or 2 trees up, and we might be like Stuart and have some fairy lights up as well. So if you want to do a nice little festive window for next week, you'd be more than welcome. We're planning 1 or 2 things for next week as well. And also, don't forget to feed the birds. I think we're done. 10:31. Nice to see everybody. Have a great week, and catch you again soon. And thanks very much to Bridget and Mark and Stuart and Maddie for your lovely presentations and chat. It's been fascinating this morning.